I'm sorry, sir, but your application is not a good fit for our bank. The words hung in the air like smoke, curling around my head, choking me. Our bank? My voice cracked not from weakness, but from the sheer absurdity. I own part of this branch? Her eyes flickered just for a second before locking onto the papers in front of her like they'd suddenly become holy scripture. The line behind me went still. Whispering, faint but sharp, slid between the spaces. I could feel the weight of eyes on my back. I leaned forward, elbows on the polished counter. I'll ask you again, on what grounds are you denying me? Sir, it's policy. Policy. The refuge of cowards. My heart thudded against my ribs, and I could feel the heat building in my chest. I wanted to laugh or shout or both. Policy doesn't apply when the owner is standing in front of you? Her mouth tightened, the kind of smileless expression that says more than words ever could. It said, I don't see you the way you see yourself. The man behind me coughed, but it wasn't just a cough. It was a signal, subtle, ugly, and old. You're making a mistake, I said quietly. No, sir. She still wouldn't look me in. This decision is final. I felt the burn rise from my stomach, up through my throat, lodging like fire just behind my tongue. She knows who I am. She knows whose name is on the ownership documents. And she's still doing this. I straightened slowly, forcing calm into my movements. Then I'll make my own final decision. Finally, her eyes met mine. She saw something. There's something she hadn't expected. And for the first time that day, she looked afraid. You saw that, right? My voice was low, but the words carried more weight than I intended. James shifted his eyes toward the floor. It's complicated. Complicated? I could feel my jaw tightening. You watched her deny me, knowing exactly who I am. What's complicated about that? He glanced around like the walls might be listening. You know how these things go. It's better not to get involved. Better for who? My mind screamed the question, but my lips pressed into a hard line. You stood right there, James. You heard every word. I did, and I'm telling you, he lowered his voice. This isn't the fight you want right now. Oh, I see. The fight chooses me, but I'm supposed to just bow out? My voice was sharper now, drawing a few looks from the chairs by the wall. I could feel them staring, pretending not to. He rubbed the back of his neck. You know what? I mean, the higher-ups, they protect their own. I took a step closer, my eyes never leaving his. And who protects me, James? He didn't answer, not with words. The silence in his throat was louder than anything he could have said. I turned slowly, scanning the lobby. People sat still, eyes fixed on their phones, shoes, the ceiling anywhere. But me, my chest tightened. They had all been there. They had all seen. And yet the air was thick with their decision to look away. One woman's gaze met mine for half a second before she dropped it, cheeks flushing. That tiny flash of shame told me everything she knew. It was wrong. They all did. You all saw, I said, my voice cutting through the muted hum of the room. And not one of you said a damn thing. No one replied. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't going to slide into the quiet corners of memory. Not for me. Not this time. I walked toward the door, my pulse steady now, not from calm, but from clarity. If they thought I'd walk away, they hadn't been listening at all. There's footage. The security guard said, his voice barely above a whisper. But you'll need a subpoena to get it. I stepped closer. You're telling me you have proof right there of what just happened, and you're locking it up. He shifted. On his feet, eyes flicking toward the corner where the camera sat like a silent witness. I don't make the rules. That's convenient, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Rules that work just fine for them, but not for me. I'm not saying I agree with it, he replied quickly. You know, I've seen things here, things I wish I could call out. Then why don't you? My words hung heavy. I could feel my pulse in my temples. He sighed, glancing toward the glass doors as if someone might be listening. Because this job, it's all I've got. If I cross them, I'm gone. I let out a humorless laugh. So I'm supposed to just walk away too? I'm saying be smart? Don't let them bait you into a corner you can't get out of. The corner. My eyes followed his toward that camera, still staring down at us, still holding the truth in its quiet, unblinking lens. My chest tightened, not from fear, but from the cold, slow burn rising in my gut. You know what? I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. I don't need permission to tell the truth, he frowned. What are you doing? I hit record and lifted the phone so it caught my face. If they think I'm going to disappear, they're wrong. The words spilled out, steady and deliberate. My name is, I gave it, my voice unwavering. On this day in this bank, I was denied service for no reason other than the color of my skin. There's footage, they have it. And they will not. Give it to me without a subpoena. I'm putting this on record for anyone who will listen. I lowered the phone and stopped recording. The guard's eyes darted between me and the glass office doors. You're gonna stir something up. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Good. Their voices were low, but not low enough. He's overreacting, one said. The word overreacting stretched like they were tasting it. My chest tightened. I stepped into the doorway. Overreacting? To being denied in my own bank? They froze. One wouldn't meet my eyes. The other glanced at the coffee machine like it suddenly needed attention. That's not what we meant. The first stammered. Then what did you mean? My voice was calm, but I could feel the heat crawling up my neck. A pause, a shuffle of feet. It's just you're making it bigger than it needs to be. Bigger? My jaw clenched. So, being humiliated in front of strangers having my existence. Questioned that small to you? You're twisting this, the second one said, their tone sharper now, defensive. No, I said, taking a step closer. I'm clarifying it. Because the moment you start whispering instead of speaking. You've chosen your side. The first one sighed. Look, we can't get involved in this. You already are, I shot back. You're just hoping your involvement stays quiet. Silence. The kind that tells you they'd rather be anywhere else than here, facing. What their silence means, I turned to leave but stopped in the doorway. You can pretend you don't see it, but word spreads. And it's already spreading beyond these walls. I walked out before they could reply, the murmur of the break. Room fading behind me. In my gut, I knew once a story leaves the building, it doesn't come back the same. I stood in front of her desk, my hands steady, my voice measured. We followed procedure, she said, her eyes flicking down to some papers like they were a shield. Show me the clause, I said, leaning forward. That says procedure changes for black CEOs. Her lips pressed into a thin line. That's not what I said. It's what you enforced. I could hear my own heartbeat, each thud sharpening my words. You had every opportunity to treat me like any other client. You didn't. She inhaled, slow, calculated. We have to be careful with certain transactions. Careful with who, exactly? My voice didn't rise, but the weight behind it did. Because from where I'm standing, the only difference between me and the man you helped before me is the color of my skin. That's unfair, she said quickly. Too quickly, I tilted my head. Unfair is being asked for extra ID in my own bank. Unfair is you smiling at him and frowning at me. Her fingers tapped the desk, a small, nervous rhythm. It's just some clients aren't comfortable. I froze. There it was, the slip. The truth. Uncomfortable with what? I asked, even though I already knew. She didn't answer. Just stared at me like maybe silence could undo the words. You've just told me, I said, standing straight, that your comfort depends on someone else's prejudice. That's not procedure. That's participation. Her jaw worked, but nothing came out. I turned toward the door. I'll be sure to include your exact words when I tell my story, word for word. As I walked out, the air felt heavier, but my steps didn't falter. The mask had slipped, and once you see the face, beneath you can't unsee it. The polished table felt like ice under my fingertips. I kept my gaze steady, even as the room's air pressed down on me. This isn't about race, one of the board members said, his voice clipped like the matter was already settled. It's always happening to the same color, I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. It is. His jaw shifted, but he didn't speak. Another board member cleared her throat. We're here to discuss procedure, not personal perceptions. Personal? I leaned forward. You think being denied access, questioned, and sidelined repeatedly is just my perception? A murmur rolled through the room, low enough to pass as background noise. But I caught the subtle exchanges, eyes darting, someone shifting in their seat. A cough that lingered longer than it should. "This is a bank." The first board member said again, "We have to maintain standards." "Standards?" I asked. "Or selective standards? Because somehow those rules bend for others." Silence fell hard. I felt their stares, the kind that measure you, not your words, from the corner. I caught a flicker one of the newer board members, her eyes meeting mine for just a second before she looked away. Not hostile. Not dismissive, watching another? Spoke, voice careful. "We can't assume intent here. Intent?" I cut in. "Intent is irrelevant when the impact is the same. You can package it in policy, procedure, or comfort level, but the result doesn't change for me." A pause, the kind that feels like the air itself is deciding whether to move. Someone at the far end of the table shifted their pen, the smallest nod following, almost invisible. An ally, quiet, but there I sat back, letting the silence hang. "You can pretend this is about procedure. I'll keep speaking the truth until you can't." And in that cold room, for the first time, I didn't feel entirely alone. The ping from my phone felt heavier than it should. I opened the message. It was from Malik. "Check this out," he wrote, followed by 3 screenshots. The first line punched me in the chest. "CEO's a liability, can't trust his kind with more credit." My breath caught. My hand hovered over the screen like touching it again might burn me. I called Malik instantly. "Where did you get this?" He didn't hesitate. "Group chat from the managers." My guy screenshotted it before they could delete it. I swallowed. Hard. So they've been saying this out loud, in writing. "They think they're untouchable," he said. "You gonna let this slide?" "Slide?" My voice cracked. "This isn't a slip of the tongue in some hallway. This is proof, pure ugly proof." He was quiet for a beat. "I figured you'd want it in your hands." I stared at the text again. His kind. 2 words that carried decades of history, blood, and unspoken walls. I'd heard it before, dressed in softer language, but never stripped bare like this. "You did the right thing," I said finally. "You know they'll deny it," Malik warned. "They'll say it's out of context, a joke, anything to bury it." I almost laughed. Context doesn't make that sentence cleaner, it just makes it uglier. My thumb pressed forward before I could second-guess myself. The screenshot slid into a new message. I typed only 2 words, "Use this," and sent it to my attorney. For a moment, the silence in my office felt different, not empty, not crushing. Just still. They thought they could talk about me like I wasn't in the room, I told Malik. Now I'm at the table. And I wasn't leaving. The oak table between us felt like a war line. My attorney slid the printed screenshots toward herself, scanning them again, even though she'd already read them twice. "This," she said, tapping the paper, "is a discrimination goldmine." I leaned back. "I'm not after money," her brow lifted. "Then what are you after?" "The truth, on record. I want their words to live where they can't erase them." She studied me for a long second. "Most clients want a payout." Quiet. "Settlement, NDAs, the works. They'd love that," I said. "They'd buy my silence, wrap it in legal ribbon, and pretend none of it happened. That's exactly how they expect this to go." "Well," I said, feeling the resolve tighten in my chest, "they're wrong." She folded her hands. "Public filing means they'll fight harder. Dig into your past, spin the story, smear. You. I've been smeared since the day they decided my face didn't fit their brand," I told her. "They just never thought I'd push back." Her lips curved slightly. "You want discovery?" "I want sunlight," I said. "Every chat log, every email, every meeting note they thought was private." She nodded slowly. "All right, we don't tiptoe, we hit first." The plan took shape between us, deadlines, filings, the media calendar. Each piece of strategy felt like reclaiming something they'd taken without asking. When we stood to leave, she met my eyes. "This will get loud." "Good," I said. "They've been whispering long enough." The line crackled before the voice came through. "Why speak now?" The reporter asked. I gripped the phone tighter. "Because silence keeps doors shut." And I'm done standing in hallways waiting for someone else to open them. She didn't respond right away. I could hear her scribbling notes. Going public could cost me. Yes, I cut her off before she could soften the warning. It could cost me work, friends, safety. But I've already been paying for their comfort with my silence. Her tone shifted, curious now. Do you think people will believe you? They don't have to believe me, I said. They just have to see the truth. The words are theirs, not mine. There was a pause long enough for my pulse to fill it. Do you want to name the company? I want to name the harm, I said. The company's just the stage, it's the script that's rotten, she exhaled audibly. This will be big. I'm not here for big, I told her. I'm here for honest. We walked through the fax dates, names, the screenshots my attorney had already filed. She asked for the emotional side, the human impact, as if my voice wasn't proof enough. When the call ended, I sat staring at my reflection in the black screen of my phone. My chest was tight, not from regret, but from the weight of knowing there was no turning back. That evening, I watched the story air. My words cut through the television static, carried by her voice but anchored in my own. And somewhere I imagined them watching too, realizing the whisper they'd dismissed had just become part of the evening news. The call came 2 days after the news segment aired. I could almost hear the press release in the PR rep's voice before she even said it. We regret any misunderstanding, she began, the words rolling off her tongue like she'd rehearsed them in front of a mirror. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said, cutting through her polished tone. It was your policy. Silence just long enough for me to know she'd lost her script. Then, we take matters like this very seriously. No, I interrupted again. You take matters like this very quietly until you're forced to talk about them, she sighed, a controlled exhale. We'd like to work together, too. Clarify the situation for the public. The situation is already clear, I said. You enforced a rule that punished me for existing in my own skin? There's nothing to clarify, her voice thinned. Public opinion can be unpredictable. We'd prefer not to escalate. That's the problem, I said, leaning into each word. You think escalation is the enemy. I think silence is. She tried to pivot. Perhaps we can arrange a settlement. I'm not here for a payout, I told her. I'm here for accountability, and you don't get to buy that off your balance sheet. The line went quiet again, but this time it wasn't hesitation, it was calculation. I could almost feel her weighing what damage control looked like when control wasn't an option. By the weekend, the shift had started. Comments under the news clip swelled with strangers repeating my words back to me. Some angry, some stunned, some saying they'd had their own run-ins with the same bank. The tide wasn't just turning, it was dragging them out with it. I watched it happen without celebration. Just a quiet recognition. Sometimes the truth doesn't need you to push. Sometimes it walks into the room and flips the table on its own. The courtroom felt smaller once I sat down, like the walls had crept in overnight to see who would crack first. My palms were damp, but I kept them flat on the table, fingers spread. As if bracing against a wave, the bank's lawyer stood, voice clipped and sharp. There's no evidence of bias in this case. I didn't move, but my jaw tightened. He said it like bias was a myth, like my experience had been a bad dream. My lawyer rose slowly, eyes locked on the stack of papers in front of him. Exhibit A, he said, sliding the document across to the witness stand. Read the highlighted text aloud. The bank's attorney leaned in, flipping pages with deliberate slowness until his gaze froze on the glowing yellow lines. Go. Ahead, my lawyer said, his voice calm but loaded. The man at the stand shifted in his seat. Our company policy states certain high-risk profiles. His voice wavered. Read it exactly, my lawyer pressed. He swallowed. High-risk profiles, including individuals from. His eyes darted toward the bank's lawyer as if asking for rescue. Certain ethnic backgrounds. The words hung in the air like smoke. My heart thudded. I'd read those lines 100 times, but hearing them aloud in this room under oath was different. It was like every doubt they'd planted in me over the years was suddenly yanked out by the roots and dropped on the table for everyone to see. Silence wrapped around us, thick and unbroken. The bank's lawyer didn't speak. Neither did the judge, at least not at first. But then I caught it, the slow, deliberate frown pulling at his mouth. It wasn't a verdict, not yet. But it was the first crack in the wall they'd built around themselves. And I knew so did they that once a wall cracks, it's only a matter of time before it falls. He waited until the cameras were on before stepping toward me, that carefully practiced half-smile on his face. "I just wanted to say," he began, voice warm enough for the microphones. "I'm sorry if you felt," I cut in before he could finish. "Don't apologize for my feelings. Apologize for your actions." My voice didn't rise, but the words landed harder than I expected. He blinked, a flicker of irritation breaking through his polished expression. "Of course I regret how things unfolded." "How they unfolded?" I repeated each syllable. "Slow. You made choices. Those weren't accidents." His eyes darted toward the reporters. "Look, I'm trying to extend an olive branch here." "No," I said, leaning just close enough so my voice wouldn't carry to the furthest camera. "You're trying to save face? That's different." He straightened his tie, the smile returning like a reflex. "Well, I think we can both agree to move forward." I didn't answer right away. My mind replayed every moment, the doors closed. In my face, the subtle digs, the meetings where my voice was silenced, the policy that branded me as a risk before I even opened my mouth. "No," I finally said. "We can't agree on that." He extended his hand, and I stared at it. It hovered there, awkward, the space between us thick with the weight of every unspoken truth. I let the silence stretch, long enough for the cameras to catch the hesitation, long enough for him to realize the answer wasn't coming. When I finally stepped back, his hand dropped. "That's your choice," he said, a tightness in his jaw. "It's my boundary." I replied, and I walked away, the echo of my steps louder than any applause. The room went still the moment HR cleared her throat. Effective immediately. Her voice was smooth, but I caught the way her eyes avoided mine. "Your employment with the bank is terminated." A murmur rippled through the staff in the corner. Papers shifted. Someone's pen clattered onto the table. I turned my head, slow and deliberate, locking eyes with him, the lone officer who'd once smirked at me across this same table like I was a problem to be managed. "7 minutes ago," I said, my voice steady enough to cut through the air, "you had the power, now you don't." His jaw tensed, but he didn't speak. He couldn't. "I don't think this is necessary," he finally started. But HR cut him off without even looking at him. "The decision is final. Security will escort you." The color drained from his face. He glanced toward the doorway, maybe looking for an ally, maybe just a way out. But his staff were watching with a different kind of silence now. No one moved to defend him. I let the moment breathe, taking in their shifting expressions. The same people who'd once looked at me with pity or doubt were now seeing something else. "Funny," I said, leaning back in my chair, "how quickly the tables turn." He didn't reply, just gathered his things with hands that weren't as steady as he wanted them to be, and as security walked him out, the weight of every past humiliation lifted, leaving only the sharp, clean air of justice served. The lobby felt different this time, lighter somehow. Even though the walls were the same, the receptionist smiled at me. Not the tight, polite kind of smile I used to get, but one that actually reached her eyes. "You can head right in," she said. No clipboard, no delay. No gatekeeping. I walked toward the heavy glass door, my steps steady. "It's open," she called after me. "Almost like a confirmation." "I can see that," I replied. My voice softer than I expected. The handle was cool under my palm, but it didn't resist. No struggle. No need to prove I belong. In my head, the thought rose, uninvited but welcome. This time, the door didn't just open for me, it stayed open for the next person. I could almost see them, someone else who looked like me, carrying the same weight I used to carry, stepping into a place that no longer asked them to shrink before entering. A man passing by held the door from the inside. "You good?" he asked. "I'm better than good," I said, stepping through, and I kept walking, not looking back.